Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Going Rounds podcast. It's me back again. Talk some more MMA, combat sports, and everything else fun going on in all of that, all of the mix of craziness. uh, yeah. So, whew, this week has been not so bad, kind of uneventful, which is good considering last week being so damn crazy. As far as work went, I'm trying to adjust my fan because like kind of warm and I don't want to get hot, and I'm trying to do it without cooking and I screwing it up. uh, yeah. So last week, big Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz fight. You know, didn't go my way, the way I wanted it to at least, but it was entertaining overall. The entire event was pretty damn good. Which is more than I can say for some of the previous events that Jake Paul has been a part of. So, I mean, I enjoyed it. I watched it. A lot of people had a lot of negative things to say, but it's all good. That's the way it goes. We're going to go over that. That's going to be the first thing we're going to go over because I have a lot to say about that and I want to cover it right away. But there's some other crazy fight announcements going on with things within that realm of influencer boxing slash um crossover boxing, I guess you can call it. And there's always UFC fights, so we got a big, not a big, but UFC fight night this weekend. Not too bad of a card, couple big names. What else we got? Some Bellator going on, some BKFC, and I think that's it. And then we'll go over the Ultimate Fighter from last week. This week, I should say, because that was Tuesday. I forget what day it is. If Tuesday felt like 4 days ago for me, I don't know why. This week has been kind of weird the way it's gone down. So yeah, we got a lot to talk about. So I will get right to it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're here with me. Check out the chat. I'm sending something right now. Hit up the chat if you want to talk about anything with me or want me to address something, questions or comments, whatever. Try to keep it cool. And see what else. Oh yeah. Oh, I already said that. Like, subscribe if you haven't already. All that good stuff. Let's just get into it because I'm ready to talk about everything that went on last weekend and all of the other stuff that has gone on throughout the week. So we'll get right into it. I feel like there was one other thing I wanted to talk about before I got into everything. Nah, let's just do it. Let's get right into it. Get the music going in the background. Let's get all the visuals up and running. Let's get started. And like I said, we'll get started with that Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz event that went on last Saturday. This was what everybody was talking about, obviously, because it's Jake Paul. Whether it's negative or positive comments and banter going on about that, he's always being talked about. There's a reason for that. He's been big in the YouTube space for so long. Negatively or positively, however you want to think about it. We all have mixed feelings. I know I do. You're gonna learn some different feelings I have about Jake Paul coming up here in a little bit. But he was partaking in a professional boxing match versus one of my most favorite MMA fighters of all time, Nate Diaz. And there was a lot to be said about this. People were doubting it was going to be good, doubting the abilities of both fighters, all the normal shit that usually happens. I thought it was a pretty entertaining event, a pretty entertaining fight, and yeah, it is what it is. The outcome was not what I wanted. The entire fight didn't go down how I would like it to have gone down. I was hoping that Diaz would test him a bit more. I was hoping that it would be a bit more back and forth. And, it kind of was a little bit here and there, but not nearly as much as I would hope. And Jake Paul just came out there looking good, doing good, and Diaz just looked a little flat. So it is what it is. But the other matches that happened that I was interested in were pretty decent as well. So we'll talk about those first. Whew. That drink is strong. I don't know what I did to it this time, but it's kind of strong. So let's get started with Nate Diaz's teammate, Chris Avila, versus former UFC fighter Jeremy Stephens. So, I mean, this fight was not as crazy as I thought it might be. You know, Jeremy Stephens also looked a little flat. He didn't seem to come out swinging like crazy like I thought he would. He was a little more timid, I guess. And Chris Avila has not really fought big name actual fighters since he started his boxing, started in all this boxing stuff. So it was an okay fight. It wasn't anything crazy, but it was entertaining to say the least. It wasn't something I wanted to turn off. I didn't watch absolutely every single second of it because I was going back and forth between the UFC event that was happening, the fight night that was happening that night as well at the same time. Crazy enough, throughout all of the fights leading up to Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz, the UFC fights were on as well. And then the main event of the UFC actually finished right before the main event of Paul versus Diaz started. So that was kind of cool because I was watching in the secondary screen, kind of smaller than my TV, watching the boxing there. And then I moved it over once the main event was done. Actually, a little before, because the main event of UFC fight night was a little bit slow. So during the Serrano Hardy fight, I actually switched it over. But yeah, Chris Avila looked pretty damn good in this fight. He pretty much worked Josh, I'm saying, what the hell am I thinking? Jeremy Stephens. I don't know why I get those two mixed up. If you know MMA, Josh Thompson and Jeremy Stephens, both MMA fighters, both fought in the UFC. They're both kind of same stature, same kind of style as far as like how they look. So it's a little weird. I get them mixed up for some reason. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. But again, Chris Avila looked pretty damn good. He put it on Jeremy Stephens. Landing lots of punches left and right, and didn't really have to take a lot of damage. Jeremy Stephens didn't do a ton to to combat everything that Avila was doing. So in the end, Chris Avila got the win. There was no knockouts or anything like that, but the decision win, and he looked pretty damn good in another professional boxing match for him. So we'll see what comes up for him next, because he seems like he wants to stay doing this kind of thing and keep going in boxing. Who knows if he'll ever go back to MMA, but for now he's gonna keep having fights in boxing, and who knows, maybe he fights another ex-MMA fighter, or maybe he moves into like a lower level professional boxer of some sort. Who knows? But he looked pretty good, and I was pretty happy that he got that win. Then we move on to the big women's fight that happened. Amanda Serrano versus Heather Hardy. And this was a good fight because Serrano is just, she's so good. She's tactful, she's a tactician. She really thinks about what she does. She doesn't go nuts. She is very calculated, and she puts on a show. And the thing between her and Heather Hardy is that they've actually trained before, and I think, maybe they've done a lot of training and stuff before, but they had a lot of respect for each other. I know there's a bit of a history there between them two, and so there was a lot of respect. And I feel like that kind of kept Serrano from getting the finish. I feel like she could have got the finish at some point. But either way, Heather Hardy, she got some hits in, as you can see, but Serrano did the most damage and put in the work. Whether it was a bit held back or not doesn't really matter, because in the end, Heather Hardy is kind of like Diaz, who will show a lot of damage on their face as long as they're getting touched. That's just the way it goes. And she seems to bleed all the time. Any MMA fight I've watched her fight, and any boxing match I've seen her in, she's bleeding. So yeah, Serrano just kept touching her up and didn't stop. It went all the way through. Serrano back and forth, catches her left and right, and even to the body. So like I said, she had disrespect, and I know that there was some of the respect coming from her corner as well with her coaches and trainers. So it's one of those things. I think she held back a bit. Maybe she just wasn't worried about what Heather Hardy could do. So she wanted to make it a decent match, and it was. But I feel like it would have been exciting, and it would have been cool to see her finish Heather Hardy. But you can't down on them for having respect for their opponents, especially when they've known each other and they have a history and all that good stuff. Sometimes that gets in the way. It's unfortunate, but at least she went out there. She still put on a show, and she still threw her hands, and it's not like they stood around and acted like they weren't there to really fight. Heather Hardy was definitely throwing it all out there. She's 42 years old. She's talked about how her time is kind of limited now, and she's been in a lot of fights. So unfortunately for her, she couldn't pull this one out. But like I said, lots of respect between these two ladies. Amanda Serrano is she's definitely got big things coming up in front of her, and I feel like there's a lot more competition out there that she could do well with. And she's got a lot of hype around her. Like I said last week's episode, that Jake Paul has done quite a bit for her. Yeah, I'm sorry, I got distracted here, but Jake Paul's done quite a bit for her as far as her career goes. He's been bringing her up to the forefront and making her like his co-main event always in all of his events, and he's just been doing a lot for women's boxing and boxing in general. So I got to give him props for that, and bringing up the ladies like he has been. You can't deny it. It's hard to deny the things that he's done, and whether he does it for his own hype and all that, fuck it, it's doing good for the sport. I enjoy combat sports in general. Boxing isn't my favorite, but I do enjoy boxing, and MMA's always been my favorite. I watched boxing back in the day a little bit here and there, but I never kept up with it. It just never kept my attention. And once I started watching MMA, it was hard to go back to watching boxing, but I still do watch it, as you can tell, and I try to cover it here as much as I can, especially all the bigger fights that have been happening, with Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford, Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia, all these big fights that have been happening. I'd like to cover them, and I like to make sure that I give them the attention that they deserve. So Serrano comes out of this one with the win, keeps all of her belts, defends all of her titles. Heather Hardy had high hopes to maybe take that away and get that really big upset, which it would have been a crazy upset to see her beat Serrano. But just like in the past, when in their fight from years and years ago, Serrano got the win again, kept her belts, and continues moving forward on that high pace. I don't even know how to say it. Like, she's getting more and more popular, more and more accolades. So she's a great fighter, and she's a great person to watch as far as come up the way that she has and continue to rise up in that boxing history. So yeah, and also she's gonna be fighting in MMA. So with that PFL pay-per-view super fight division. So we'll see what that brings, because she's been looking damn good in boxing, and I would like to see her move over to MMA and look that good there as well. she has finished fights with submissions, so she's good on the ground too, not just on her feet with her hands. That'd be pretty exciting to check out. And we'll see when anything gets actually announced for that division in PFL, because so far, it's Amanda Serrano, Clarissa Shields. She just signed again with the PFL. But I don't know if that's part of that super fight division. But they have Francis Ngannou, Jake Paul. Like, they have all these people that they've been signing and big announcements, but no fight announcements yet. No matchups yet. So I'll be excited and I'll be waiting, and I'll definitely be talking about it whenever that happens. But moving on to the Diaz versus Paul portion of this fight. Diaz, it's weird. It's weird because I heard a lot of people downing on Diaz's performance. Nate is just one of those guys that throws volume punches. He doesn't throw punches to knock you out. He doesn't have that one punch knockout power. He never has. And, he's got that one punch make you stumble power. Because he's also thrown a barrage of punches at you before that. So he'll wear you down, and then he'll catch you one good time, and that'll be what stumbles you and gets you wobbly. And, he doesn't necessarily pounce after that. So it's kind of weird. He has a weird fighting style. I appreciate it, but at the same time, I understand why people think what they do, and they're going to say what they're going to say. I heard a lot of people talking shit about how, and of course Jake talking shit about how his punches didn't hurt. He has KSI is talking about him having pillow hands. People saying that his style doesn't carry over from MMA to boxing in a good way. And I agree. It didn't look good. But, he didn't make the excuse, but he said it. And I mean, the facts are the facts. He said he had a shoulder injury and a knee injury. And actually his team said that before he did. So it's not like he just came out and was like, well, I of course I couldn't fight. Of course I didn't do well because I was injured. It took a few days before it was said. I think someone on his team said it that night, but he didn't come through and talk about that portion of what happened until later on. Either way, he still feels like he won. If you watched any of it or saw any of the highlights, he's got his hands in the air looking like he did win. And he always has that confidence in his performance. And I heard Dana White, who is the most critical of a lot of people, especially anything that has to do with Jake Paul. I heard Dana White saying after Dana White's Contender Series, there's a post-fight press conference, and he was talking about how Diaz looked great. He put on a great performance, and he feels like he did better than any of the other former MMA fighters that have boxed Jake Paul. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that 100%, but I do know that it was entertaining. Diaz was being Diaz, and I do wish that he would have put a little more behind his punches, but if he was hurt, I understand why he couldn't. But I do wish that he put it together a bit more and he followed through a little more, because I just feel like more could have been done and it wasn't done. So that for me was a disappointment. That for me was a letdown. So I have to point out the negatives, because I'm not one of those fans that's like, whoever I'm a fan of or whatever team I'm a fan of can do no wrong. If my team or my favorite fighters or anything of that sort are not doing well, I'll say it, because I have to be real like that. It's just like me fucking up on the podcast sometimes, doing stupid shit that I know is routine for me, and I'm still fucking up. Like, I have to point it out. That's just me. That's how I learn. That's how I get better. And that's how I stay humble when it comes to my teams. I know a lot of people out there that'll be like, my team's the fucking best. Fuck your team. Your team ain't shit. But yet their team is 0-16 in football, or fucking, 25-86 in baseball. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't, I can't be that way. I am a loyal fan. I am a hardcore fan of a lot of things. including my favorite fighters, including MMA in general, including my teams. As you can see, I'm constantly repping the Braves. Yeah, they're doing well. Yeah, they won the series not too long ago, and they're always up in first place, but it hasn't always been that way. So, and I've always repped the Braves, and I've always been a Braves fan. So, I'm a fucking Indianapolis Colts fan in football. You can kiss my ass, because they are not good right now. And I know it, and I understand it. And you can say they suck all they want. I'm still going to be a fan. That's just the way it goes. Just like with Nate. He didn't do well. He didn't have a great showing. But he still got those little moral wins here and there. And he still did show a little bit. And that's better than nothing. Better than him pulling out. Better than him just completely not showing up and getting knocked out easily. I mean, he took a lot of damage. You know, that's one of the things. He took a lot of damage. You know, I'm pinpointing a few things here that he actually did do, because, you know, there's a few times where he caught Jake. Maybe he didn't wobble him, he didn't rock him or anything like that, but he caught him a few times, and he did land some good punches and some good combinations. He just does not have that kind of power, and it's unfortunate. I was hoping that the same kind of style that he brings in MMA would be something that he would be able to carry over into boxing and would overwhelm Jake a little more, because he's not used to seeing things like that. But I got to give it to Jake. Jake came out hard and fast, and he wobbled Diaz right away in the first round. And right away I was like, oh, fuck, you cannot do this to me. You cannot get knocked out in the fucking first round. I was so worried that that's what was going to happen. But I know Diaz is durable and has a great chin and can take a lot of damage. It's probably not good for him in the long run, but I know that it's possible for him to do that, and he doesn't get stopped hardly ever. So it's been a long time since he's been rocked and stopped in a fight. So that's just not how he is. And I was just worried because he is a little older. He's getting older, and I wasn't sure if it was gonna affect him the same way. You know, he like I said, he put in some work. He got some hits on Jake Paul, and of course, the still photos are always gonna look like it was a bit more than it was. I'm not trying to put anything out there that isn't true. These are just the photos that I collected of, you know, highlights and points of the fight. You know, he did put some work in on Jake, and he did have some good moments. It wasn't a lot, but he did have it. So I'm not trying to say anything that didn't happen here. Those are the facts. That's what happened. Jake Paul was just too much, but Diaz, of course, had to be Diaz. He kept that normal persona that he puts up, and he was flexing. He was doing the normal Diaz shit, and it was funny, and it was entertaining, and it was cool. But Jake Paul was just overwhelming. Like I said, he came out in the first round. He wobbled Diaz right away. Diaz is a slow starter, unfortunately, in any fight that he's in. So that's why I was worried initially too, because Jake Paul is like, if he could get it done quickly, that's good for him. And that's what a lot of people said, was if Paul wins this fight out of anything, it was going to be early in the rounds. And he predicted first he said a 4th round knockout, then he said a 5th round knockout. He did get a knockdown in the 5th round, but he did not get that knockout, but he did land a lot of good punches on Diaz. He did look good technically as a boxer against Diaz. Diaz was doing this like bull rush, arms up, kind of rushing in, trying to close the distance fast, and maybe fighting, close range fighting, probably due to the injury of the shoulder, I'm sure. But he said it's like that Mexican boxer, old school Mexican boxer type style of rushing in with your hands up and then putting together some combinations from the inside. Not a bad idea, but he didn't really execute that plan very well. So it was unfortunate. And, Jake Paul figured it out right kind of quick and adapted. And that was what he did well. Everything that Nate was throwing at him, was not, but it wasn't doing a lot. So I think Jake Paul probably got more tired than he got injured in that fight, which is unfortunate. Again, I gotta be real. I'm gonna say what I saw, and that's what I saw. Like I said, in the 5th round, he did drop Diaz with a left hook that he was landing a lot and kept landing it on that temple of Diaz, and that's why his eye was fucked up right there, because he kept landing that shot either above the eye or just right over to the temple some, and that was fucking with Diaz for sure. But for some reason he just couldn't defend it, and I don't know why. It was unfortunate because I've seen him defend worse, and with those big gloves, he just couldn't get the defense up to stop that. And I feel like if Jake Paul would have continued to target that location on Diaz, I think he could have got the knockout. So I don't know why he didn't. It was kind of weird because he was landing that left hook really successfully. So, and then the knockdown was not great. Diaz fell, and he didn't fall hard, but he went down. And then it's kind of like he tried to catch himself to pop back up right away, and then he continued to fall further instead, and he almost fell out. He fell under the ropes and almost fell out of the ring, which was, of course, Jake Paul says, I almost knocked his ass out of the ring. And it's like, bro, you knocked him down once. He got back up really quickly. Yeah, it wasn't a good look the way that he got knocked down, but he got up quickly and he came back to continue fighting. It's not like you knocked him down and he was dazed and it took him forever and he took the 8 count all the way. None of that. As soon as he collected himself, it was within seconds. He was up and back on his feet and ready to go. So, but the knockdown was there. The knockdown is the knockdown, and it happened. And Jake Paul predicted that he would knock him out in round 5, and instead he just knocked him down. So he did get the knockdown, and that did count for more in Paul's favor. He didn't really need it, though. If he didn't knock him down, I don't think that anything would have changed. He still would have won. But, Diaz got up. They continued to exchange. You can see the damage on his eye right there from that left hand landing over and over again of Jake Paul. And, yeah, the fight continued on. Paul was getting him on the inside, pressing him against the ropes. I mean, Diaz was rushing him, but for some reason kept winding up, backing up and in the ropes. Probably because Jake was putting the pressure on and landing everything he was throwing. So, yeah. But it was funny because in the 9th round, Diaz had to get that choke in. I think it was the 9th, or it might have been the 10th. I don't remember. It did go all 10 rounds. It was a 10-round fight. But as you can see right here, he got that guillotine in, and according to Jake, he was actually choking him. He did cinch it in and start he started putting that choke in deeper and deeper, and that's why Paul's right here holding his neck, because he really did choke him. And of course, Diaz, in true Diaz fashion, with his hands up in the air like, yup, I just won. Just like he did against Leon Edwards, did something at the very end of the fight, and kind of got that moral victory, kind of won the fans over. It was a very Diaz heavy fan base out there in Dallas, Texas, which is kind of crazy. I wasn't expecting that, but Jake Paul does get a lot of hate even at his own events. They say fuck Jake Paul. They start chanting fuck Jake Paul in the audience a lot of times, and they'll boo the shit out of him and everything else. So yeah. I just totally lost my spot. Oh, there we go. But at the end of the fight, they still had respect. Diaz, even with Conor, who he hated the most, it wasn't that deep-seated burning hate like Khabib had for Conor. So when they were done, Diaz still hugged it out with Conor and, dapped it up and everything else, just like he did here with Jake Paul. So it was a good showing. Like I said, it was a good event. It was good for both these guys. They both made a lot of fucking money. And Diaz with the Real Fight Inc. co-promoting was pretty badass too. So I was happy about that. But in the end, we had Jake Paul getting the win. Of course. I mean, I have to voice my, oh my God, what did I just do? I have to voice my opinion on that one, regardless. Oh shit, I just screwed everything up. That's all right. We'll get that started again. And I will fix this real quick, like, because I didn't realize that I probably shouldn't have done that because it screwed everything else up. But anyway, it was a good fight. There was a lot of celebrities there. You know, of course, Nate Diaz had to be there and support his bro. And after the fight, actually, in an interview, you know, with whoever, I don't even remember who it was, but he had Nick Diaz had an interview after the fight, and he actually said, "Give me Jake Paul or Logan Paul. I don't give a fuck. I'll fight either one." At some point in time, there was actually a face-off between Nick and Logan and Jake and Nate, which was kind of crazy. I wish I would have seen that. I hadn't seen any pictures of it, but Jake said it happened. So that's kind of crazy. That would have been cool to see. That should have been something that happened in the ring, like right now while this picture was happening, and that would have been dope. But I'm sure they were trying very hard not to do too much because there's always that friction. There's cameramen fighting. There was the Jake Paul team and the Nate Diaz team. Their cameramen were about to fight. And Diaz was talking to Ariel Helwani in the post-fight interview in the ring, and fucking Diaz was like, "Hey, you guys need to be nice," because they were fucking fighting. It was hilarious, like, to hear Diaz say, "Be nice" to people that are, you know, about to throw hands. Kind of funny and ironic. But yeah, the rest of the Scrap Pack, of course, there to support Diaz as well. Gilbert Melendez and Jake Shields. Jake Shields is so weird. This dude, look at him. He's the only one I don't like that much out of this crew. He was a badass fighter, and he always gets props on that aspect, but he's a little off the rails when it comes to everything else, and he always looks like a weirdo. Like, he looks like such a creep with his hat backwards like that, his fucking ears sticking out, face. I don't know. I don't know. Something about Jake Shields. But it's a Scrap Pack, and I respect them. So, yeah, that's how that goes. But like I said, overall, not too bad an event. I'm disappointed in the outcome, but I'm still happy to see Diaz get paid, get all that recognition and hype around him, and we'll see what happens next for him. If he's gonna go straight back to MMA and jump back into the UFC for that third Conor fight, or maybe something else, who knows? Or maybe he will take up Jake Paul because Jake Paul offered him $10 million to fight him in MMA. Now, Jake Paul does say that it'll take him 8 to 10 months of training, and then he'll be ready to fight in MMA versus Nate Diaz. So, who knows? But the only problem is that they're both loyal to different organizations. Right now, Jake Paul has a contract with PFL, so he is under the PFL banner, and even though he's doing all these boxing matches, you know, it's his own promotion that he's doing that under. So PFL, though, for MMA is he's signed to PFL for MMA. So he can't do it in the UFC. Diaz says, I don't fight for that promotion. I fight for the UFC. So he's loyal to the UFC, probably because they've done so much for him and treated him right for the most part. And so we'll see how that gets worked out. He said, or we do an event like this where, you know, where I represent with Real Fight Inc. So maybe they do another co-promotion between MVP and Real Fight Inc. and they put on an MMA event. You never know. I mean, Gamebred's doing it. Anthony Pettis has his own promotion. All kinds of guys that they used to fight have their own promotion. So So yeah, that's what's happening there. But Diaz says he'll fight anybody as usual. And for that $10 million, he actually initially said that it's going to cost more than that. But who knows? I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. I wouldn't mind seeing the MMA fight between Diaz and Jake Paul, because even though Jake Paul has a background in wrestling and a decent background in wrestling, I still don't know if he can hang with Diaz in the cage at all. So we'll see what happens there. But since we're on the Jake Paul, I know so much Jake Paul, right? But I did not realize that he's fucking naked in this picture. That is ridiculous. I thought he had shorts on, and I just now realized that he does not. But this is the Netflix documentary of Jake Paul, the problem child. They're doing this whole series of untold documentaries of different athletes. Like they have one of Johnny Manziel. They have one with oh shit, I just drew a blank. I can't remember who else. I saw the Johnny Manziel one pop up the other day, so I haven't watched it, but this is one I wanted to watch. And I wanted to watch it before the fight, but I just didn't have a chance to. So I gotta say though, with this documentary, if you haven't seen it, and if you hate Jake Paul, just give it a chance. I mean, it's cringy at times, and it's annoying at times watching the way that he came up and the things that he used to do. But at the same time, I don't know, it gave me a different level of understanding of Jake Paul. Maybe not more respect, but the dude hustles. I'll give him that. I respect that grind, and I can't down on it, because he has made a lot for himself. Just a kid from Ohio that was recording crazy shit on YouTube, and now what he's done overall and the influence he has on one of the biggest combat sports out there, on top of trying to make changes for other combat sports like MMA and fighter pay and stuff like that. So I mean, I give him his respect for all that, and I have to say that the documentary was pretty damn good. It showed a lot between him and Logan, and it followed the fights. They highlighted some of the very first ones: the Nate Robinson fight, the Deji fight, and then they went into really getting involved with the Tyron Woodley fights. And then, of course, they were following him around and backstage and with him for the Tommy Fury fight. So that was interesting to see everything that went down with that. Oh, and of course, the Anderson Silva fight. So they were with him through all of that. And it was interesting to see him react to things kind of differently, because he knew Netflix was around and they were doing the documentary. But at the same time, it's still pretty real. Like, he kept it pretty real. I have a different perspective on him in a small little bit of a different type of way, because I do respect him a little more for all the things that he's done and where he's come up from. And like I said, the dude hustles, he's smart with it, and he's doing the damn thing, and I can't knock it too much. He's still not one of those guys that I like a lot, but he's also not one of those guys that I hate so much. I would like to see him get knocked out. I would like to see him get beat up in a good way in boxing or in MMA. I don't care. But I would like to see him catch a real ass whooping, because his only loss wasn't even an ass whooping. Tommy Fury just beat him by points technically. So, but I don't hate him as much as like Sean Strickland or Colby Covington. I don't hate him like that. And if I did before, I don't think I'd be at that level still. After watching this documentary and seeing everything that's gone down with this last fight, I just wish he would keep the cringy bullshit to a minimum. And I feel like he kind of does already, but when he gets to that point, it's fucking disgusting. Like, gross. I hate it. I can't stand it. I wish I could reach to the TV and punch him in the fucking face. Yeah. Because, as soon as he's good at making YouTube videos. That's why he's popular on YouTube, right? But some of the stuff, man, it's just too much. It's too much. It gets you fucking, like, my blood boils watching some of the shit. And it's just like, come on, man, stop fucking doing that. It's dumb, but it is what it is. That's the way that they've grown up. And him and his brother have had lots of beef. Back in the day, they covered some of that in the documentary, and to this day, they were just arguing on Impulsive, which is Logan Paul's podcast, the other day. So they had him on because, of course, they had him on after the win, and they're, you know, going over everything and talking about it. But him and Logan got into it pretty hard about Logan always taking the side of his enemies and partnering with his enemies, and them fighting over who's getting what fight, and you know, Logan saying that people are taking the fight with Jake because Jake is the easier opponent and smaller. And Jake's like, are you kidding me? You haven't even had a professional fight yet. Like, all of your fights have been exhibitions, so they don't count. And on top of that, you've lost how many? So I'm like, damn. So they went hard at each other. It's pretty entertaining to watch that portion of that podcast. It's about an hour and 20 minutes. It's about as long as I usually go. And you know, they get into it within the first like half hour. And they spend about half hour arguing. So you know, you just have to put up with a little bit in the beginning, and then you get to the back and forth, the fighting and arguing, and then it's entertaining. So go check it out. I mean, that's you can watch it on YouTube, or you can listen to it, I'm sure, anywhere you get your podcast. But it's called Impulsive, and it's the latest episode with Jake Paul. So entertaining, like I said. And speaking of Logan Paul, his partner KSI is now of course, let me fix this real quick, because apparently and you know what's stupid about this is, I know why. Because what I should have done was go right into talking about Jake Paul. That's what I meant to do. Jake Paul, Logan Paul, god damn it, now I'm fucking it all up. Too many Pauls. Talking about the Paul brothers way too much here, but I have to. So Logan Paul versus Dylan Dennis was announced earlier this week for the boxing match on October 14th. They're calling it the Prime Card, of course, because Logan Paul and KSI are partners in the Prime Hydration and Prime Energy drinks. So this is going to be the Prime Card on DAZN. I'm pretty sure these are all exhibition fights, but Logan Paul's fighting Dylan Dennis, which is hilarious because Dylan Dennis has been scheduled to fight I don't know how many people, I don't know how many times, and every time he backs out with an injury, or he just drops out of the fight for this reason or that reason and doesn't show up. So with that in mind, they actually put in the contract, Logan Paul's people put in the contract, that Dylan Dennis has to show up, and if he doesn't, he gets fined $100,000. Now, if you pay attention and you know who Dylan Dennis is, he puts out there that he's rich as fuck, that he isn't worried about money. But a lot of people say that he's broke as shit, actually, and it's just all for show. And on top of that, he hasn't even fought in, I don't know, I think it's been like 2 years since he fought in MMA, 2 years since he's fought in general. So, I mean, he's never fought in boxing. So this will be his first boxing match, even though, like I said, he's been scheduled for many other ones and never showed up. KSI, Anthony, the dude that punched him in the... I don't even know which ones are actually which, but he's dropped out of fights left and right. So, now it's in the contract. He's going to owe $100,000 to Logan if he drops out of this fight for whatever reason. So... that might be a factor and might keep him in this fight, but we'll see. So yeah, that's happening October 14th. And also, like I said, KSI is fighting Tommy Fury. So KSI is on this rant and on this trajectory to try to prove that he's better than Jake Paul. He already he tied with Logan Paul when they fought each other. I think it was a draw. or maybe he beat him. No, I think he actually beat him. Either way, he's already fought Logan, and now they're, you know, business partners in Prime the Drink. So they're not gonna fight each other. They've already said that. KSI's been just clamoring to fight Jake Paul because he says he's better than him. He had a boxing match one night in Misfits Boxing where it was like him versus two dudes at once and beat them both. I don't know how the fuck that happened, but either way, now he's going after the guy that beat the only guy to beat Jake Paul, Tommy Fury. I don't know why Tommy Fury's doing this. He must be getting paid real well for being a actual professional boxer. Like in the midst of his career, he's deciding to go ahead and do all these influencer boxing fights. So it's kind of crazy. I guess you got to get that money regardless. But yeah, KSI wants to be able to say that he beat the only guy to beat Jake Paul, which means he can beat Jake Paul as well. So he's still trying to make his way into. He said he'll fight everybody that Jake Paul fights and beat all of them, just to prove that he can beat Jake Paul as well and get the fight and prove it. So we'll see what happens with that. That's the Prime card, October 14th. Should be. I mean, that should be pretty good. If Dylan Dennis shows up against Logan Paul, I think he gets his ass kicked against Logan Paul, honestly. And then KSI versus Tommy Fury. I don't know, man. KSI is kind of like Jake, where he's been coming up and looking better and better. And, you know, more and more wins. But I don't know how many of those wins are legit, as in who his opponent was. So we'll see. Anyway, we'll move on to fight announcement. Bellator 300 is happening October 7th, and it's gonna be Ryan Bader versus Linton Vassell 2 for the heavyweight title. Bader finally coming back to defend that. We got Chris Cyborg versus Kat Zingano for the featherweight world title. And then let's see, we have Nurmagomedov, I don't know which one it is, I can't remember, versus Brett Premise. So that's another title fight in the lightweight division, I believe. And then you have Liz Carmouche versus Alimale McFarland, which they're actually training partners and teammates, I believe. And they're pretty good friends, so they're fighting for a title as well. So they're doing 4 title fights for Bellator 300. So they're coming strong with that 300 card, because obviously UFC is coming up on UFC 300 as well. So I think they're trying to get the upper hand ahead of time on the UFC with, you know, what they have going on for their card. But it's crazy because they have 4 former UFC fighters that are either champions or fighting for the championship. So, you know, that's Bellator for you. But speaking of Bellator, they have 2 events before they get there, because this weekend it is Bellator 298. This Friday, actually. So tomorrow. It's Logan Storley versus Brennan Ward. And Brennan Ward's a badass, but Storley's no joke either. 14-2 for Logan Storley and 17-6 for Brennan Ward. Welterweight main event. These 2 guys are their fights are usually pretty damn good. It looks like Storley was the former interim world champion as well. All right. Every time these guys fight, though, I see great highlights. Everyone's talking about it. You know, but I for some reason I never seem to catch the nights that they fight. So we'll see how that goes. Other notables on the card lower down: James Gallagher versus James Gonzalez. That should be pretty decent. Gallagher's a good fighter to watch. Younger fighter, Irish. Let's see. Man, there's not a whole lot more. Not too many more notable names on that card. There's a lot of fights though. Holy shit. 17 total fights that night. That's gonna be like that event's gonna be long. but like it's weird. There's not a ton of big names, but it's a lot of fights. Justine Kish, former UFC fighter, versus Diana Avzaragova. Holy shit. But Diana is 6-0, fighting Justine Kish, who's 8-6. So that might not be too big of a competition there. But anyway, we also have BKFC 48 happening this weekend as well. I believe that's tomorrow. Yes, that's tomorrow as well. Oh yeah, BKFC is usually on Fridays. The main event is John Dodson versus Junior Ridge. I thought this poster was pretty fucking cool. I don't think that it's I don't know that it's an official poster. I think it might just like be fan art or something, but I thought it was pretty dope. Let me see here. Who else is on this card? I totally forgot about this one. So, Dodson versus Ridge. Oh, Bryce Hall, who I don't know if you guys know who Bryce Hall is, but he is a YouTuber slash influencer of some sort, and yeah, he's making his debut in BKFC. What's funny is I remember my daughters talking about him back in the day. So I know he's been around for a while, but he, like I said, he's like that influencer type, YouTuber type guy. So I was kind of surprised to see him in the mix with all that. Let's see. There's another Dodson on the card. I don't know if that he's any relation to John Dodson, but he kind of does look like a version of him, so he might be. As far as everybody else, it just looks like a bunch of ex-convicts as usual with their mugshots on here. So, oh, Bryce Hall's opponent is, I guess I should at least say that, G. Perez, which I'm not sure who he is, but yeah, he's 3-0 in BKFC, so that's a hell of a fight right away. Undefeated fighter with a little more experience. All right. Oh shit, man. I knew I had a lot to talk about, but this is kind of crazy. We're almost at the 1 hour mark, and I'm not even through half of what I was getting at today. So let's go a little quicker, except this one, unfortunately, is going to get me to talk a little more. Maybe go off on a little tangent here, because so Stephen Wonderboy Thompson was supposed to fight against Michel Pereira in last weekend's UFC card, and it didn't happen because Pereira pulled out with an injury or something. I'm not sure. I guess he said something about, oh no, he missed weight. I'm sorry, what the fuck am I talking about? He missed weight by 3 pounds, and he couldn't make the weight within the allotted time. So they gave Wonderboy the option. Oh man, I feel like I'm gonna sneeze. They gave Wonderboy the option, as usual, to take the fight still, even and take part of Pereira's fight purse. They usually get like 20 or 30% or something like that. Or else, you know, he doesn't fight and doesn't get paid, basically. Which is weird because he showed up and he made weight, so he should at least get his show money. In the past, that's usually what happens. But this time, Dana White was on vacation, so he wasn't at the fights. So Wonderboy said, you know, he didn't get paid his show money despite making weight for his canceled fight against Pereira, or Pereira, however you say his name. So yeah, that was unfortunate. And when he was asked about it, he's like, yeah, but you know, the UFC usually takes care of me. Dana's not in right now. He's on vacation. So when he gets back, I'll talk to him, and I'm pretty sure things will get worked out. Well, at Dana White's Contender Series, the post-fight press conference, Dana said, you decided not to fight. The guy was 3 pounds overweight. You get a piece of his purse if you take the fight. We also offered him another fight. There's a much bigger story behind the scenes. What he means by they offered him another fight was they were like, hey, in 2 weeks you can fight on that card, and then you'll get your, you know, show and win money even if you win. And he said no. And then, so he says, there's a much bigger story behind the scenes. So what we do is try to get you another fight, try to turn you around quickly. If you don't turn around quickly, then we try to figure out what did it cost for your camp. We'll reimburse you. There's a lot of different ways that this gets worked out. But the other thing that he did say that's not in this, and I didn't even realize it wasn't here, is that he said, hey, listen, that's not how things work. You decided not to fight, so you don't get paid, which is bullshit, because fighters in the past have definitely gotten paid at least their show money because they showed up and they made weight, unlike their unprofessional opponent who couldn't make the fucking weight that it was agreed to, that they had a contract for, and wants to fight at a higher weight, which most of the time, if you look at the stats of guys that take a fight when their opponent hasn't made weight, they almost always fucking lose. So that's a big risk for Wonderboy to be taking when he's the age that he is. He's 40 years old. Surprised he's still fighting, but he's 40. And that's a tough-ass fight to take. Pereira alone is a tough fight, but him not making weight and being overweight and heavier, that's a tough fight for him to take at 40 when he's trying to make at least one more run at the title, I guess. That's what it sounds like. But he definitely doesn't want to go back to the bottom of the pile. So it's a big risk, and he didn't want to take that fight. And then they're like, oh yeah, but you can have a fight in 2 weeks or whatever, it'll turn you around quickly. And he's like, well, no, because then I don't have a proper training for whatever opponent I have. And on top of that, I just came out of fight camp. I'm peaked already, ready to fight now. And then you want me to prolong that for 2 weeks and extend it for 2 weeks? Like, that's a lot to ask of a fighter. But this fighter pay bullshit continues. It's the same shit as always. Dana fucking being a dick and acting like he says there's much more to the story, much bigger story behind the scenes, but what is it? Like, what the fuck is it? And why, how is it much bigger when fucking Wonderboy is like the nicest dude in MMA? Like, he doesn't even cuss. He says like freaking A or something like that. He doesn't cuss, and he's like the nicest dude ever. He like teaches kids classes all the time and like gives back to the community, and it's just nice. He's a nice, wholesome dude. So what could actually be the bigger story behind the scene that Dana White's fucking referring to? What, that he decided not to fight at an unfair advantage because the other guy couldn't fucking hold up his end of the deal? That's some bullshit. It's just more bullshit coming from Dana and fucking over fighters for no reason when it comes to their money. Like, the dude was the money's already set aside. You know, you set aside the money for these guys that are getting paid for their show and win and a bonus even. So why can't you just give this fucking guy who went out there, cut the weight, put his body through that fucking, sacrificed his body through that shit, went through the entire fight camp, did everything he needed to do. And yeah, Pereira might have done all that too, but the motherfucker didn't make weight. And he obviously didn't do things correctly. What else was holding him back from making that weight? So he couldn't get any of that done. And yet you won't pay the fucking guy his show money for showing up. That's what the fuck show money is. If you, in a fight, if you win, you get your show and your win money. So you get 2 checks. If that's it, as long as most contracts are like that. If you show up and you lose, you still get your show money because you showed up, you fucking weighed in, and you fought the fight. And yeah, you lost, but you only get half your paycheck now. You only get 1 check, but you still get that 1 check because you showed up and you did. That's why it's called a show. That's why it's called show pay, because you show up and you get paid. And then now he wants to say he doesn't want to pay him. Like, what the fuck is this shit? Again, you know, it's not even a guy who talks a lot of shit. It's not even a guy who talks any shit. It's not even a guy. It's a company dude who fucking has constantly been in all these fights, has fought for this organization for so long, been loyal and fucking nothing but nice. And then they want to fuck him over. It's bullshit, man. And there I go. I just ranted for the rest of the time to get us to 8 o'clock, and I'm not even halfway done here. There's no way I'm going 2 hours. I will speed things up. But I had to get that off my chest. I think it's fucking annoying. I think it's bullshit. And I think it's more of a reason for these fighters to start getting together a little more and figuring out what to do to kind of fight this battle against the behemoth that is the UFC, the monopoly that is the UFC, the fucking bullshit tactics of the UFC and Dana White. I love the company. I love the organization. I love the fights that they put on. It's my favorite to watch. It's what I've watched since forever. But I feel like these things need to be gotten a hold of and wrangled in, and the fighters need to get what they deserve for showing up to the fight and upholding their portion of the contract. All these things in the motherfucking contract, well, guess what? In the contract, it says you show up and you make weight and you get paid, motherfucker. And if it doesn't say that, that's unfortunate. And I just remembered right now that Ariel Helwani was talking about how a lot of these fighters do not have that in their contract spelled out, and that's a goddamn shame. So if that's the case with Wonderboy, fuck, man. Fuck. These guys need to smarten up. They need to get better fucking representation, and they need to get a better handle on things so that these things are put in their fucking contracts, and get those contracts updated quickly, better sooner than later, because the next time you fight and then some shit like this happens, are you going to be the next one? The next one that doesn't get paid his show money for fucking showing up and doing what you said and agreed to doing, and yet you don't get compensated. It's bullshit. We'll end there with that one. Dana White's Contender Series. Oh my god. Nope, there it is. I got fired up and I forgot what I was doing. Dana White's Contender Series debuted this week. Also happening on Tuesdays, the same night as the Ultimate Fighter, which is kind of weird. But the Ultimate Fighter is starting to wrap it up. They have one half of their finals already in the bag. They haven't fought it yet, but they know who the opponents are, so we'll get to that in a minute. Dana White's Contender Series. It says Wednesday on this, but it actually was on Tuesday, so I don't know what the fuck this is about. That's weird. Almeida versus Fernando. Nolan versus Grad. Sarvlovsky versus Machado. Albat versus Cortez, which Cortez was actually Tracy Cortez's brother. Yeah, I did watch that fight. I'll get to that in a minute. Diaz versus Borjas. And this is one of the few times that all five winners of all five fights actually got the contract. So yeah, everybody that won got a contract. It was a pretty decent night of fights. Talbot versus Cortez is like the only fight I actually paid full attention to and watched. But that was tough to watch because Tracy Cortez is watching her brother kind of get his ass whooped. He looks like he has a lot of good potential, but he needs some work, and he needs to continue to work on his game. This Talbot guy fucking just ripped him apart, was landing everything, and just looked damn good. So yeah, that was that for Dana White's Contender Series. And I mentioned the Ultimate Fighter happening the same night, so we'll go over this week's Ultimate Fighter. Season 31, episode 10. This one had the Coaches Challenge, which is usually entertaining, and we had the first semifinal fight between Kurt Holobaugh versus Jason Knight. So two bangers, two fucking shit. They called it the Battle of the South because Jason Knight for damn sure is from the South if you listen to the way he talks. But Holobaugh, I don't remember so much exactly where he's from, but it was this what I watched this fight. It's all I watched from this episode was the actual fight, because I heard it was a banger, and it definitely was. The full 2 rounds. Oh, I'm sorry, it didn't go all 2 rounds, but went to a third, right? I think it went to a third round. Yeah, I had it up here, and I'm stupid because I think I just closed it out. Actually, here we go. I can get it right back. I gotta find. Oh, they called it Battle of the Bayou. So that, I guess they're both from Louisiana. Louisiana's Aluba and Mississippi's Knight. Okay, that's why. Man, I want to just know, did it get to a third round? Dude, this fight was insane. You could just hear the punches through the TV. It was loud, it was crazy, and it was just entertaining as fuck. Like, they traded punches left and right, had fucking Conor McGregor reacting to everything. Okay, so it did end in the second round. But yeah, Aluba just was fucking unstoppable. Jason Knight, it has a chin from hell and took everything. But dude, you could hear him grimacing in pain. He took a body shot and he was like, "Ugh!" And like, just, you heard every reaction. It was so quiet in the Apex. It was fucking weird. But you heard every punch. You could hear Jason Knight just go, "Ugh!" And he'd be like, "Oh, that was a good one." He'd be saying shit, and Aluba was just letting rip, fucking left and right, back and forth. It was pretty insane. It was a crazy fight. So if you didn't watch last week's episode, go back and at least watch the fight, because it was damn worth it. It was the fight of the fucking season. I don't know if it can be topped, but with Aluba being the one that put on that performance, he's got to have a game opponent like Jason Knight is, because Jason Knight is definitely that dude that'll trade punches with you like that. So you got to have a game opponent to have a performance like that, or else somebody that just doesn't know how to defend and won't get his head out of the center line. If Kurt gets that opponent next, he's going to win this, and it's going to be impressive. So I don't believe his first fight was this impressive, but this fight was insane. So I'll be looking forward to seeing his next fight. But like I said, Kurt Aluba got the win. I guess I fucked that one up too. I don't understand, because I went through all this, and for some reason, it's not doing what I wanted to do. But yeah, Kurt Aluba got the win, and Dana White. Oh yeah, and Dana White was fucking happy about the fight. He looked super impressed. He looked excited about what just went down. He was like, "Holy fuck." That's like pretty much what he said the whole time. But what he was pissed about was the coaches challenge. I mentioned it earlier. It's usually the funnest part of the season, besides some of the fights when they get as good as they were this past fight, or this past episode. But the coaches challenge wound up being the ice bath, the polar plunge, whatever you want to call it. They had to sit in there and answer questions, 3 rounds of questions, as the competition. So this is what the competition was, and it wound up being in there for almost half an hour, which is crazy, because after 15 minutes you're at a higher probability of getting frostbite or fucking hypothermia if you're in something that's in water that's 37 degrees, I think it was, or some shit like that. 30, I don't remember. Yeah, for half an hour. So he didn't say it during the show, but he said it to the Mac Life in an interview right after. He said these guys did this thing for almost 30 minutes. Dangerous, stupid, irresponsible, and just completely fucking ridiculous on part of the production crew that handled the coaches challenge. I was literally fucking pissed off about it. Yeah, disgusting. Won't happen again. So Dana does the ice bath. It's like the trend. It's the fad right now. I mean, it's supposed to be very beneficial and whatnot, but Dana definitely does it. So he knows what it's like to sit in there, but he also is smart enough to know what the dangers are. Rogan did it for the first time on camera on Instagram Live, and I guess he pushed it to like 20 minutes and said he wasn't right for like 3 days. His body temperature was all fucked up for like 3 days after. That's how long it took to get everything back to normal. So It's crazy. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking. This is a weird challenge. And but in the end, Conor won the 10 grand. 1,500 per fighter is what that amounts to. So, you know, Conor doesn't keep the 10 grand. He gets the 10 grand and then he gives it to his fighters, I guess. So I don't know if they changed anything this season, because again, like I said, I only watched the fight from this episode. But that wraps it up for Tough 31 episode 11. Catch you next week on Tuesday, where we have let's see, that was a semi round for lightweight. So next we have, let's see, where the hell is it? Austin Hubbard. Oh, Kurt Holloway will be fighting Austin Hubbard in the finals on UFC 292 prelims August 19th. So that'll be coming up. So this next week will be the last episode of The Ultimate Fighter, and then the finals will happen August 19th during UFC 292 prelim card. The final fight of the season is Rico De Silva versus Cody Gibson in the bantamweight semifinal. So that's what's happening on Tuesday. All right, let's move on to last week's fight night, Nashville, UFC Nashville. And we had Corey Sandhagen versus Rob Font in the main event. It was a catchweight bout, but it was supposed to have been at bantamweight, I believe, 135. But they gave Rob Font some leeway because he was a last-minute replacement. But at the bottom of the card, we had, actually in the undercard, early prelims, whatever you want to call them, Billy Quarantilla versus Damon Jackson. Billy Q got that win by unanimous decision. Looks like there was a lot of decisions in this card. Kyler Phillips versus Hani Barcelos was a decision win for Phillips as well. We had Carlston Harris versus Jeremiah Wells. Carlston Harris got the win by technical submission, anaconda choke in the third round. Cody Durden versus Jake Hadley was a war for sure, but Cody Durden got the win by decision. And Sean Woodson got the win by decision over Dennis Bazooka as well. In that, and then we move to this fight, Ludovic Klein versus Ignacio Bohemondez. And Bohemondez has had some impressive wins in the past, but Ludovic Klein definitely went in there to win. Beat up Bohemondez and got the unanimous decision win. So, like I said, a lot of decisions on this card, but some of them were pretty exciting. This one wasn't too bad of a fight. And we move on to, oh shit. Well, like I said, Ludovic Klein won that one. And then we'll move into Tanner Boser with this nasty body shot against Alexa Kamer. But yeah, Boser pretty much dominated this fight. Came out, got the unanimous decision win against Kamer. Then we move to, oh shit, I have these backwards. Well, we'll go to Diego Lopez versus Gavin Tucker. Diego Lopez, what just came out like a fucking banshee, and in a minute 38 wound up on the ground with an armbar, sunk in, and then twisted it even and fucking just ripped Gavin Tucker's arms to shreds, and forced him to tap. So he got that TKO. He got the submission, the armbar submission in the first round. So that was pretty damn good. I guess I didn't switch it around. My eyes are just playing tricks on me. Next fight, though, we had Dustin Jacoby versus Kennedy Nzechukwu, which I thought was going to be a pretty decent fight. And it turned out it was a quick fight for sure. Dustin Jacoby came out ready to win, throwing punches, and fucking knocked down Nzechukwu. right away and wound up finishing him by TKO punches in the first round. Minute 22 in. So very, very short fight. Then we get to the co-main event, which is Tatiana Suarez versus Jessica Andrade. This one I was excited for because I like Tatiana Suarez a lot, you know, with all of her obstacles and things that she's overcome in her life, to finally get back and continue on the win streak that she had going before she got her injured was great. And a higher level competition as well against Jessica Andrade. And the first thing I said when I was talking about this fight last week was that Jessica Andrade better watch herself on if Tatiana gets this fight to the ground, because while Andrade is I'm sure a black belt in jiu-jitsu, she definitely does not have the intensity and the aggression that Tatiana Suarez has. And she's a fucking animal. She's a beast, and she gets you on the ground and either ground and pounds it out or fucking submits you somehow, or does both and you wind up submitting or getting put to sleep or something. But Tatiana Suarez is the truth, and she's definitely out there to fucking wreck through the entire division and make her way to the title. And that's what she's on her way to doing now, especially beating somebody like Jessica Andrade, who is a former champion herself, and getting submitted in the second round, a minute 31 in, by guillotine. She sunk it in and she cranked it down, and she wound up making Jessica Andrade tap. So Tatiana Suarez comes out with that win, continues her undefeated streak in MMA. She is now 10-0 with most of those fights being in the UFC. Yeah, she's 7-0 in the UFC, 10-0 overall, undefeated in her MMA career. And if you watch her fight, you know why. Because she gets shit done. Even in decision, she's dominant, but most of her wins are by submission and a few by TKO as well. So catch Tatiana Suarez fighting anytime she is fighting. And she's hoping to get back in there soon, so maybe we'll get more of that coming up. Also, she did a podcast with Megan O'Leary called Making the Fighter or something like that. Also Terrence McKinney, who's fighting on this week's card coming up. That's a damn good podcast, so check it out if you get a chance. Making the Fighter with Megan O'Leary. She talks a bit loud, so Megan O'Leary is a little bit over anxious when on the mic, but she does keep the show going. She gives a lot of good information, and she put these podcasts together, and they're really good. I enjoyed it a lot, listening to the background. It's kind of like a mini documentary, but listening to the background of what Tatiana Suarez came up and overcame with the cancer, all the injuries, the Olympic, the mishaps with the Olympics because of everything that she was going through. So it was pretty nuts. It's a pretty good listen. So check that out too. Shit, I'm over here giving all kinds of people free publicity, but that's all good because I enjoyed it. So then we move to the uneventful and not so entertaining main event: Corey Sandhagen versus Rob Font. The unfortunate thing is Sandhagen tore his tricep muscle in the first round, so that hindered him quite a bit. So he has 20 minutes of fighting with a torn tricep muscle, and that's not fun. So of course that's going to stop him from being able to throw all that power behind punches or throwing a lot of punches. And also it's going to hurt him with trying to transition through things on the ground. So he uses wrestling, he uses grappling, a little bit of ground and pound here and there. For the most part, it was just a lot of control time on the ground. Pretty boring of a fight, honestly. If you recognize what was happening and you appreciate it, that's good too. And if you didn't, well, there is something to appreciate there, which was the dominance that he had as being injured and still being able to hold Rob Font down and get a unanimous decision win over him while fighting pretty much 4 rounds with a torn tricep. So that's pretty crazy. And just shows how much of a savage Corey Sandhagen is. So he gets that win, and we'll see where he goes from there if he advances, because that was not a great performance by him overall, impressively as far as I'm concerned. But well, no, I mean, yeah, I mean, I feel like it's impressive that he did what he did, but it was hard to say that it's more impressive to get him that title fight. It might take him a little longer now. So we'll move on to wrap it up here with this week's event: UFC on ESPN 51, UFC Vegas 78, some shit like that. Too many numbers, too many different titles, not enough drink to cover it. Yeah, Vicente Luque versus Rafael Dos Anjos. So this should be a pretty good fight. You got the younger guy in Luque versus fighting the grizzled vet in Dos Anjos. He's fought everybody pretty much. There's been all these posts going on recently about him being the low-key BMF because of all of the big names that he's fought throughout his entire career. It's pretty impressive. But this fight should be pretty good. Luque sounds like he's fully ready, and Rafa sounds like he is as well. Heard them both on the UFC Unfiltered podcast today. So we'll start from the bottom of the main card, though. Actually, let's see who is on. This is the first fight of the main card, but let's check out the bottom real quick. I know there's a couple notables down there. Juliana Miller, last season's Ultimate Fighter winner, against Luana Santos, is the first fight of the night on the undercard. Let's see who else. Terrence McKinney, who I was talking about earlier, versus Mike Breeden. Terrence McKinney pretty much you can sum up his entire career in less than 5 minutes. And I'm talking like fight time. His fights are very fast. He's 13-6, but he does lose. He is on a 2-fight losing streak. But I mean, he had such crazy wins right away. 7-second knockout of Matt Frevola in his UFC debut, which is nutty. He's had a lot of under 1 minute fights that he's won or lost, even one of them. But yeah, he's got a 3-3 record in the UFC, so that's kind of tough. But he is an impressive fighter, and he's definitely one of those to look out for in the near future. He is fighting Mike Breeden, who's 10-5. Then you got then we get to this fight: Josh Freemed versus Jamie Pickett. Freemed is 10-4. I think that's how you say his name. That's kind of a tough, weird one. But he's 10-4 overall, coming off a win to Sadigras Dumas. Yeah. Before that, he had 2 losses in a row. So, won by guillotine in his last fight. That was in March of this year. So he hasn't been too long since he fought. And he's fighting Jamie Pickett, who was the guy that unfortunately got finished quickly by Bo Nickel in his last fight. It was 254 the first round. And, there was that accidental / who knows if it was actually a groin shot that kind of doubled him over. And that's kind of where Bo Nickel got him and finished him from. So kind of a tricky one, but he did lose by arm triangle choke in the first round against Bo Nickel. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. So yeah, they're both trying to get back in the win column. Oh, I'm sorry. He's looking to get back in the win column because Josh Freemed actually coming off a win. Jamie Pickett, though, like I said, heavy hands. He's coming from Dana White's Contender Series, of course. 13-9. See, yeah, Dana White's Contender Series. His first fight was against Tafon and Chukwi, which I believe is fighting on this card as well. Oh shit, Jamie Pickett fought twice on Dana White's Contender Series. Lost his first one against Punahele Soriano, who is actually somebody still in the UFC now. Fought another fight somewhere else, and then came back and won a fight in Dana White's Contender Series to get into the UFC. So, then we move on to, well, shit. Oh no, this is Tafon and Chekwi. Oh crap, I forgot the I. That's why. Well. AJ Dobson versus Tafon. We'll just say Tafon, because that's a tough last name. But AJ Dobson is 6-2, coming off a loss. But before that, he had a win in Dana White's Contender Series. So, he's coming off 2 losses. Shit, 2 in a row. So he has not won officially in the UFC just yet. So he's looking for his first win. But I mean, he was pretty impressive in Dana White's Contender Series. Wound up winning by submission by rear naked choke in the first round. So that was a good way to get in the UFC, but he's got to get into the win column, because damn, he has yet to win one in the UFC. And then we have Tafon and Chukwi, I think how you say his name. 6-3, but is also on a losing streak. 2-fight losing streak. Last fight being against Carlos Olberg by TKO. Loss before that was by KO. And then his only wins in the UFC have been by decision, except for Dana White's Contender Series, which is a head kick knockout. Damn. A lot of Contender Series fighters, maybe because the Contender Series just started again. So they're like bringing back all the guys from there. Who knows? But this fight should be a good one. Polyana Viana, if you're interested, I believe she has an OnlyFans. If not, just check out her Instagram, because that's good too. But she was a girl that was kind of, there was talks about her being with Cody. Not Cody. What is that dumb shit's name? Oh my god, I just totally spaced it. Probably because he's irrelevant. Colby Covington. That's who the fuck I was trying to say. She was a training partner with him, and there was talks about them being together or whatever, but who knows? I don't know why she would even think about doing that. But she is fighting Yasmin Lucindo. So Polyana Viana is 13-5. 13-5 overall. Coming off a win against Jenu Fry, which is a pretty good win for her in November of last year. Has a loss to Tabitha Ricci though, which Baby Shark is a tough opponent, so can't down on her there. But she does have a win over Emily Whitmire. Been in the UFC since 2018, so but her record's not great. She's like 4-4 in the UFC. So she's fighting against Yasmin Lucindo, and she is 14-5, and I covered her not too long ago because she was fighting against Brogan Walker, which was April of this year. So that's why I remember. She got that unanimous decision win against Brogan Walker. So she's coming off a win. Before that, she had a loss. This is only her 3rd fight in the UFC. So that should be a pretty decent fight. Let's move on to Khalil Roundtree versus Chris Daukaus. This could be a very boring fight, or it could be a very exciting fight, because Khalil does both. Sometimes he bores you with his wrestling and stuff, or he just gets wrestled. Maybe that's more of it. But either way, Chris Daukaus is a heavy hitter pretty much, and I feel like if they get in a war, that's what's going to make this exciting. We have Khalil Roundtree, 11-5, big heavy hands. Used to be like a 300+ pound guy, and now he is fighting in the division. Is this light heavyweight? So he's like 205. But yeah, he's on a 3-fight win streak. Last fight being against Dustin Jacoby in October of last year. So it's been a while since he's fought, but he's on a 3-fight win streak. And like I said, he's got TKO win, but then he's got split decision, TKO decision, KO, TKO decision. So it's like every now and again he just gets into a boring fight. Winds up because I know most of his decision fights have been kind of boring. But he's fighting Chris Daukaus, who has a brother who fights in UFC as well. Kyle Daukaus, I think. And I believe he's a lower weight. Yeah, this is weird. So I guess Chris is going down from heavyweight because he says he weighs 243 pounds. Holy shit. Yeah, I guess so because he had three losses in a row in the heavyweight division against Jairzinho Rosenstruck, Curtis Blades, and Derek Lewis. God damn. Before that, though, he was on a 4-fight win streak. Now he's on a 3-fight losing streak. So I guess he's changing it up, going down to light heavyweight against Khalil Roundtree. So this should be a pretty decent fight. Has potential to be a really good fight if things go the way that they could go. So now we move on to Cub Swanson versus Hakeem Dawodu. Cub Swanson is a vet. He's been around for a long ass time, and he's usually involved in very good and very exciting fights. But you know, he's been in a lot of wars. He's up there in age. He is 39 now, and that's a lot for fight years. He's 28-13, and he's coming off a loss to Jonathan Martinez in October of last year. Kind of had a win-loss type record recently, but Cub's a killer. He's a fighter, and he's one of those guys where he's definitely gonna come out there and put his all out. He lost by TKO leg kicks in his last fight, which is crazy. Before that, though, spinning wheel kick TKO for him against Darren Elkins. The damage. And his opponent is Hakeem Dawodu. There's another picture of in a battle. Bloodied up like always. Moving on, though, to Hakeem Dawodu, 13-3 with one draw. He's only 32, so 7 years younger. Also coming off a loss, though, to Julian Erosa, September of last year. So it's kind of the same amount of time that they haven't fought. A lot of decisions, whether wins or losses, on Dawodu's record. But anytime I've seen him fight, it's been pretty good. So it's one of those decisions where you're going to be entertained type fights. As you can see here with the head kick. Big body punch here. Trying to figure out who that was against. Dude, I'm already out of that drink. I'm so damn thirsty right now. I don't even know why, because I've drank so much water today. But we'll move on to the main event, which is Vicente Luque versus Rafael dos Anjos. This one should be pretty good because Rafael dos Anjos has been around for a long time. He's a legend, ex-champion. And Luque is just one of those, good up-and-comers, good name, been in some good fights, and, people talk highly of him all the time. He is 21-9, with coming off 2 losses, though, fortunately. KO by punches to Jeff Neal and Bilal Muhammad decision. Before that, though, he was on a 4-fight win streak with wins against Michael Chiesa, Tyron Woodley, Randy Brown, and Nico Price. All big, good names. He's got a win against Mike Perry, Brian Barberena, Jalen Turner. Another win against Nico Price. Another win against Bilal Muhammad. It's crazy. He's fought a lot of guys, and he's been around for quite a while. And yeah, you can definitely expect a good fight with any time Vicente Luque is winning. This is a nasty punch against Mike Perry, looking all bloody already. Then you got RDA with the great kicks. High-paced fight, always with him. 32-14, 38 years old. Coming off a win over Brian Barberena. That was a submission. Before that, he had a loss to Rafael Fiziev. And then a couple wins before that against Felder and Renato Cornero. I won't even go into the amount of big names that he's fought. Leon Edwards, Kevin Lee, Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington, Robbie Lawler, Neil Magny, and the list goes on. It's insane how many big names and how many crazy fights that RDA has had. But he's good on the ground as well. So Luque's got to watch out for those submissions. Overall, I feel like it should be a pretty decent fight. I'd like to see Dos Anjos win, but I like Luque too, so I'll just be watching this one for the entertainment value pretty much. And that wraps that up for this week's fights coming up. Those will be, the main card starts at 4 p.m. Prelims start at 1 p.m. That's all Arizona time. So a little bit of an earlier start. Shouldn't be too bad. Yeah, check it out. Don't forget. That's the UFC fights for this week. And that wraps it up for everything else. I had a lot to talk about. I went on and on and on. The beginning, the Jake Paul and Nate Diaz, of course I was going to talk about that a bunch, you know, and then all of the upcoming fights and all the rest of the Paul brothers and Dana White drama individually, by the way, and then everything else. Fighter pay. Anytime we talk about fighter pay, I'm going to go off and I'm going to have an opinion, and it's going to be a long-winded opinion. So it is what it is. That's what we're here for. Have fun, talk about a lot of cool shit, and wrap it up. And that's what I'm about to do now. So don't forget to like and subscribe and share it with a friend. You can listen to this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts. If you don't find it somewhere, let me know and I'll try to get it there. Or just make sure you tune in again next Thursday, 7 p.m. right here on YouTube. I'm out. I'm done talking. I need more drinks. Have a good week. Don't forget to watch all the good fights this weekend. Take it easy. Peace.